The gross reality of hygiene in the Old West is worse than anything you've ever imagined. Every cowboy movie you watched ain't like this because the real frontier, especially the 1870s and 1880s, smelled like a dumpster behind a seafood restaurant in August. So let's start with bathing because that's the one thing they didn't do very much of. Out on the frontier, most folks bathed in whatever water was nearby, a river, a pond, a creek, it don't matter, and if one of those weren't available, they just climbed into the horse trough. You know, that's the thing the livestock drinks from. So they taking a bath in the water that has horse slobber in it. Now, I've been around some rough living in my life, but I've never looked at where my dog drinks and thought, hey, you know what? That kind of looks refreshing. No. The water wells and the hand pumps didn't show up on the frontier until the 1870s. And even then, you still had to carry your water by hand. Good water was so hard to come by in the Old West that people would skip washing their dishes and washing their clothes and even washing themselves. Now, here's the part that really gets me. Even when water was available from a nearby stream, there's a pretty good chance that Billy Bob upstream had built the outhouse right next to it. And I don't mean a real nice outhouse with a big hole in the ground. What I'm talking about is a shallow hole in the ground with a wooden board over it. So your bath water might be somebody else's toilet water. That's the level of recycling I'm not comfortable with. No, thank you. The people who could afford a real bath, they had to pay for the privilege. A cold bath in used water was the cheapest option. You know, used water. A tub with water in it that had somebody else in it right before you. I can see it now. You be waiting your turn, here comes some dude saying, that feels so good. I ain't washed that place in weeks. I'll be like, yeah, I think I'm clean enough. Someone else had my spot in line. You know what I mean? Y'all give me my money back. Now, if you wanted a bath with hot water, that cost extra. Soap and a towel, those were add-ons. Now, if you could get your hands on lye soap, which frontier families made themselves by mixing wood ash, that don't sound too bad, with animal fat, gotcha. You were doing pretty good if you had some of that lye soap. No, Castile soap made from olive oil was considered a luxury item. I kind of consider that a luxury item now, though. No, getting a bath in the Old West was like buying a truck at a dealership. The base model comes with nothing, and everything extra is in the premium package. If you wanted your own bathtub at home, you had to wait until Sears launched their mail order catalog in the 1894. A tub, it cost you $22.50, which is about $800 in today's money. So when tubs become available, families shared them. They shared the same bath water. One person at a time, usually. Dad went first because he was the dirtiest, then mom, then the kids. You know, the youngest kid come last. By the time that baby climbed in, that water had more personality than most people I know. The whole family cleaned up on Saturday night, not because Saturday was special, but because they wanted to look presentable for church on Sunday. You know, the Lord was the only motivation strong enough to get some of these folks near water. And here's what really blows my mind. A lot of folks in the frontier believe that bathing too much was dangerous. Not that they were drowning in the water. They thought washing would open up their pores and make them susceptible to diseases. Well, I think they kind of had it completely backwards. They were afraid clean skin would make them sick. All the while they were walking around caked in months of filth, and that's what would get them sick. It wasn't until the 1880s that Pasteur established the connection between germs and diseases. And in 1882, a German physician named Robert Koch, he went a step further and he identified the exact tuberculosis bacterium under a microscope, proving once and for all that specific germs caused specific diseases. But even before Koch, Florence Nightingale had pushed for sanitation reform in the hospitals, though ironically she believed that bad air caused illnesses. Now, if you're behind Billy Bob when he bent over and some air come out of him, I think she was on to something. But she got the right result, but for the wrong reason. Even after Pasteur and Koch's breakthroughs, plenty of frontier doctors still believed illnesses come from the bad smells in the air. Well, Billy Bob must be traveling. They called it miasma. That was a theory. It's something that smelled bad. That was what makes you sick, which means by their own logic, they should have been terrified of each other. No bath in a couple of weeks. Geez. Now, let's talk about some teeth, because dental care in the Old West was an absolute horror show. Most people on the frontier didn't practice any kind of dental hygiene at all. If you were lucky, you had a chew stick, which is just a piece of birch wood that you chewed on until it went in frayed up. Then you scraped that frayed in across your teeth. That was the toothbrush for most people. The practice actually has ancient roots. A version of it's called maswak. It's been used across Africa and the Middle East for thousands of years, but the American frontier, nobody knew that. They were just called chewing sticks. Now, toothbrushes did exist back then, and they were carved from cattle bone with bristles made from either wild boar hair or horse hair. But they were so expensive, you're gonna love it, that entire families shared one. Sometimes, this is even worse, sometimes whole towns shared one, a community toothbrush. Don't that sound good? Stealing one of those toothbrushes was considered larceny and could get you thrown into jail or fined $25. Who would steal that thing? Well, that $25 fine though, that's a full month's worth of wages back then. That's how valuable a good toothbrush was. Well, the result was predictable. The average person was completely toothless by age 50. The good thing about that, though, is you don't have to worry about that damn community toothbrush anymore. By the end of the Civil War, only three dental schools operated in the entire country. This didn't come common on the frontier until 1870s. And when I say dentist, I'm using that term loosely. Most of the time, your barber, the guy that cuts your hair, is also your dentist. He'd cut your hair, shave your face, and then yank out your tooth with a pair of pliers. Pain relief was optional. And by optional, I mean your choices were whiskey or nothing. Towns like Dodge City and Tombstone had several of these barbers/dentists operating out of the same store where you get a haircut. Yeah, Bob, I'll take a little off the top, and I got a problem with that tooth down here. One of the more famous dentists out there in the Old West was Doc Holliday. He graduated from Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery in 1872. And then he headed to the frontier because he had that tuberculosis and he needed some dry air. He practiced dentistry by day and played cards by night. The man was actually very talented, not just at cards, but at dentistry. He won an award for the best set of teeth in gold, but Doc Holliday was the exception. Most people got the dental work done by someone with no training, and you guessed it, dirty tools. But if you think the dental work was bad, wait till you hear about the dentures. Oh yeah, I'm gonna tell you, this stuff cracked me up. I don't want any. Dentists used something called Waterloo teeth, which were real human teeth pulled from fresh dead people. They pulled the teeth and then they boiled them to kill the bacteria. Then pin or rivet them to a living person's mouth. That sounds marvelous. I'm gonna tell you straight up, I don't need those teeth. Screw that shit. You could be walking around with a dead person's teeth in your head. That ain't dentistry. That's something else. Like that's a haunting or something. Come on. The practice only started to fade after the Goodyear brothers developed, what they develop? Tires, right? No. It's the vulcanite. It's a hard rubber material, like tires, which allowed dentists to make affordable denture bases out of something that hadn't previously been in someone else's skull. It was an improvement, but it didn't take much to be an improvement of what they were doing now, did it? The bathroom situation barely qualifies as a situation. The first commercial available toilet paper wasn't sold until 1857. A man named Joseph Gaddy started marketing moistened hemp sheets infused with alloy. That sounds almost as good as that soap. He was so proud of his invention that he printed his name on every single sheet. That's worse than charming. The man wanted credit for what you were wiping your with. Before that, most people's option The popular option was dried corn cobs, which I'm told is apparently softer than you'd expect, but I'm not going to try it. But even after toilet paper became available, some folks in western states still preferred their corn cobs. Now, the Sears catalog eventually became the most popular toilet paper substitute in rural America. By 1900, most farm households received a free catalog every year. It's like free toilet paper, right? Because it served double duty. The bad thing is that when Sears switched to glossy coated paper in the 1930s, many customers actually complained, not about the product, but about the paper quality. The shiny pages don't work for their purposes. You know, poop, it don't stick to it as well. Indoor plumbing only existed in big cities like New York back in the 1840s. Everyone else used an outhouse or chamber pots. They'd also call them thunder mugs. Sounds about right, right? Every morning, those thunder mugs got emptied right out the window. Don't walk that way. Saloons were no better. Men chewed tobacco and spit on the floor all day long. They set spittoons out to catch it, but just like today's urinals, most men missed them. So they covered the floors with sawdust to soak up the mess. Now, the sawdust created a breeding ground for Doc Holliday's tuberculosis and pneumonia. And tuberculosis was one of the leading causes of death on the frontier. In Texas during the post-Civil War years, tuberculosis counted for a staggering number of deaths. Towns like Deadwood weren't just rough because of gunfights, they were rough because of what was floating in the air of every saloon. Between 30 and 40% of American children never reached the age of 5. Tuberculosis, cholera, smallpox, diphtheria, and a dozen other diseases thrived in those conditions and cut those kids down. Life expectancy in the 1800s hovered around 30 years old. Today it's pushing 73, and the two biggest reasons for that improvement are better nutrition and, you guessed it, better sanitation. So the next time you grumble about your water bill or the price of toothpaste, just remember that 150 years ago, your other options were a corn cob or a horse trough. It's a little better today, I guess. But I think a visit to the dentist still makes me want to take a shot of whiskey. If you like this episode, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that hype button. I'll see you in the next episode of The Hidden Lens.